So we were on this slide. We're still on Chapter 10, Modern Aerospace, and we didn't get very far. I was talking about stealth. So just to reiterate what we're going to do for the quiz, because there's two more quizzes, right? We got to do the number 9 and the number 10 quiz. So that's what we're going to do on Wednesday at the end. So this is going to be something different. So that's tomorrow, Wednesday. At the end of the class, I tell you what, at the beginning of the class, we'll take the quiz for number 9, because you already have notes from number 9. And then at the end of the hour, tomorrow, you'll have the notes for Chapter 10. So we're going to take the quiz, which this is different. We're going to take the quiz for Chapter 10 during the last 10 minutes of tomorrow's class. And then on Thursday, does anybody have any questions about what happens on Thursday? Okay, just in case you don't remember, it's the final exam. 20 questions. It's open note. You have 35 minutes. You better bring your notes to school on Thursday, lest ye shall surely be guessing at the answers for the test, because you will be taking the final exam on Thursday. So we covered stealth. So we talked about the F-117 at the end. And here's the B-2 bomber. Oh, I guess you can't see the B-2 bomber unless I turn on the screen. So there's the B-2 bomber of the United States. I think we built 20 and crashed one. I think we got 19 left. They're all stationed at Whiteman Air Force Base, about an hour and a half outside of Kansas City. Question? I'm sorry? I might have number 10. It says Modern Aerospace. Do you have a Modern Aerospace? Okay, great. Sweet. You're welcome. So this is designed as a nuclear bomber, but it's stealth. So even if you don't have air superiority and you don't shoot down enemy fighters, then radar doesn't pick this airplane up very easily at all. I read somewhere in an unclassified question. I'm going to guess 40-some thousand feet. It's not a fantastic aerodynamic shape. It's really designed to not bounce radar off of it or to bounce it in a different direction. So I'm totally guessing here. So probably it'll probably not fly any higher than an airliner, like about 40,000 feet. But they're not going to fly it. They could fly it at 40,000 feet, but I'm going to guess. I haven't read up that much on B-2 bombers because How high? Oh, subsonic, 650 knots. It does not go supersonic, but it doesn't need to, because if you can't get picked up on radar, nobody knows you're there. And they can shoot missiles at you. No, they can't. They can shoot missiles, but they don't know where to aim it. And even if it's radar-guided missile, it won't be able to pick it up. Question. Yes, there is. The infrared signature, IR, or heat detecting missiles. Right, so if you're flying around in a jet fighter and you see it, you could fly behind it. If you had infrared heat-seeking missiles, you could launch those, and it would fly up the tailpipe and blow up. But this gives off a lot less heat signature than other airplanes, and I don't know how it does it, but there are things installed at the back of the engine that mixes outside air with the exhaust, so what actually leaves the engine compartment is actually cooler than regular jet engine exhaust. So I don't know how well infrared heat-seeking missiles would do against this, but you'd have to see it with your eyes to find it. So somebody told me once that a B-52, the equivalent of 100 square yards of radar reflectivity. It's a big old giant piece of aluminum, and it reflects, and it has a lot of flat sides on it. So it reflects radar energy really, really well, and it's the equivalent of 100 square yards of radar reflective material. A B-1 is still made out of aluminum, but it's really curved, so when radar hits it, it bounces and goes in another direction. It doesn't hit it and bounce back to the radar transmitter. So it has the equivalent of 1 square meter. And a B-2 has the radar equivalent of a duck. It looks like a big bird on radar. So you fly that, yeah. So you have to, really what you do is you turn down your radar on the ground so you don't pick up the birds. Because it gets to be a pain. Otherwise you have, 1,000 targets up there. Of course, if you could pick out one that's going 600, a goose that's going 600 miles an hour, but I don't know all the details there. And here's an F-22. This is a modern fighter. that the United States has had in service for many years now, and it's very stealthy. You notice it's very curved, and I don't know all the things they've done to it. I'm sure they paint it with something that tends to absorb material, but it's also stealthy in that it doesn't reflect radar very well, which is awesome. In 1992, this was actually the year I got out of the service, the United States military started letting females be in combat crewed airplanes. It's not that females couldn't be pilots and navigators and flight engineers and loadmasters and electronic warfare officers in the U.S. military. They were, but they weren't in any of the airplanes that were combat airplanes. No fighters and no bombers. And I got out that year before that, as that was happening, so I never flew with anyone who wasn't a male. But now there's even female Blue Angels. There's female B-52 pilots. There's female F-18 pilots in combat, fighting and dying for the United States of America. UAV stands for 3 words: unmanned aircraft vehicles. So you're going to write that down. Unmanned aircraft vehicles. Does anybody want me to spell any of those words? I'll say how I hear a yes, I think. Oops, too far. That's a nice picture. Yeah, it's a drone. That's exactly what it is. Well, in the United States military, they're mostly used for reconnaissance, but some of them are used for bombing. The United States has, on multiple occasions, many occasions, used, I think it's the Reaper, but I don't know the exact number of it, to drop guided bombs and kill people on purpose. The key here is that it's unmanned. It's a remote control airplane. It's really, really big, and it's got cameras that transmit back the information. And instead of a remote control airplane that works 100 yards away or 50 yards away, it works 10,000 miles away because it's being controlled by a satellite data link. I have a former student of mine who got a job for a contractor, a company that makes drones for the United States military, and they have a contract to help the military fly them, and he actually flies UAVs in the Middle East inside of a room in Southern California. I think it's in Palmdale. He didn't say Palmdale, but I think it's in Palmdale. That's in the Mojave Desert, outside of Victorville, north of Riverside, north of Pomona. And somebody else is there, and they handle the cameras, or they handle the bombing, and they can see. They got cameras that transmit video, and they got navigation screens that say exactly where it is. And I don't know all the details, but I have no doubt, because he wouldn't tell me a lot of things, that he's not just flying machines that take pictures. He's flying machines that drop bombs. But he's not dropping the bomb. He's just operating a little RC airplane. So there's a picture of a Reaper. Oh, it's an MQ-9 Reaper. And that weapon there underneath it, this beastie right there, that's a guided bomb. There's the fins on it move. And there's cameras and sensors, and it data links back up to here, to the aircraft, and the aircraft data links up through satellites where you want. There's a jet engine in the back with a propeller. It's hard to see, but there's a propeller, so it gets really good gas mileage. And it's hard to see in the picture, but right here and right here, there are green bombs with yellow stripes. Those are 500-pound Mark 82s. So it looks like there's at least 2 on each side. So that's 2,000 pounds of bombs, plus your guided bomb. They're really accurate. That's kind you see on YouTube. You watch the video, and it's going down towards a truck or a building, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, because that's the screen that gets sent back up to the operator that's guiding it. Tilt rotors, man. I tell you, when I got out of airplane mechanic school, I went to work in Southern California at a helicopter manufacturing plant, and NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, was testing the XV-15, and it had 2 seats, ejection seats, but it had tilt rotors. That is, it could take off and land like a helicopter, but in flight the rotors would tilt forward and it would fly like an airplane. And the U.S. military ended up funding it, and this is the V-22 Osprey, and it's bigger than a UH-60 standard helicopter for the Army. But those rotor blades, you notice the engines underneath them, those things tilt, and it's got a wing on it. So it can take off and land up and down, sideways, forward, backward, like a helicopter. But after it gets off the ground and starts moving forward at about 50 miles an hour or so, I don't know the exact number, they start tilting the rotors forward, and then it flies like an airplane, and it'll go 300 miles an hour and get twice the fuel economy of a helicopter. So this is awesome. You take off out of a ship, that's got Harrier jump jets and Marine Corps people in it, and you can take people and cargo 100 miles inland and drop them off and come back, and you can carry a huge giant load, and you don't need a catapult on an aircraft carrier. So the Marines have them. I don't know if the Navy has them. The Army does not, but the Air Force has them. And the Air Force uses them for special operations. That's where the Air Force or the Navy usually flies the Navy SEALs in somewhere, or the Rangers, or the Green Berets. So tilt rotor is a modern technology that there's a lot of. There's a picture of it flying really low to the ground. Think about this rotor blade as it spins around. It's going to come down there. How high is it from the ground up to there? I don't know. That's probably 20 or 30 feet. Just think of you're sitting right here. This rotor blade comes just behind the pilot, and it only misses the aircraft by about a foot or so. Woo. Just don't sit right there if the blade comes off. Of course, if the one blade comes off, probably everybody's going to die anyway, so you don't really have to worry about it that much. Self-deployable combat aircraft. What is self-deployable? Isn't that a UAV? Isn't that a drone? No. Self-deployable means you don't have to take it apart and stick it on a boat or take it apart and stick it on an airplane. Yes? Oh, yeah, it'll glide, just not very well. A little airplane like a Tomahawk, it'll have about a 10-to-1 glide ratio. Helicopter, an R-22 has a 4-to-1 glide ratio. Probably glide better than that. It might get 5 or 6 or 8-to-1. I'd be worried about the propeller blades hitting the ground, but they'll probably break off, as long as they don't break off and come through where you're sitting. If you're going to, not that it's not okay to think about that, I think it's awesome. I do think about those things like that. But if you get worried about it, then it's probably not a good idea to sit in it for a lot. As in, be a professional pilot sitting in the front seat. If you're going to worry about it. Think about it, but not worry about it. So here's self-deployable. I hope I have one here. Give me a picture. There it is. Look at that UH-60 helicopter. It's got an aerial refueling probe on it. And so you don't have to take this apart and stick it in an airplane and fly it across the ocean, or you don't have to take it apart and stick it on a ship and ship it across the ocean. That C-130 has a refueling drogue on the other wing as well. So you could take like 4 helicopters and fly across the North Atlantic, and then the helicopters would take turn every hour or two, go up there and get some fuel. Maybe you can take 6 helicopters, because the inside of the C-130 is a big old honking gas tank. If you want to, you can put one in there. So self-deploying just means it has far enough range, or it has aerial refueling, that you can leave the continental United States and go to anywhere in the world you want to, and you don't have. And when that helicopter gets there, pow, it's ready to go. You don't have to put it together again. Of course, let's talk. See, I think if I recall correctly. Yeah, okay. So this is a SAM, surface-to-air missile. A surface-to-air missile is a missile that's launched from the surface, and it's designed to shoot something that's up in the air. And if you're flying fighters or bombers, you learn all you can about surface-to-air missiles that are operated by the bad guys. The only time a B-52's ever been shot down was during Vietnam, and they got shot down by SA-2s made by the Soviet Union. I don't think we lost any B-52s to fighter planes, because we had air superiority most of the time. So that's one of the things that's happened during the Cold War. is the development of surface-to-air missiles. And so that's what the THAAD is. I was talking about the THAD that's designed to shoot down intercontinental ballistic missiles. That is a surface-to-air missile. It's just designed to shoot down rockets instead of shoot down airplanes. Airplanes are a lot slower, and it's easier to hit if it's slower. And they got big old wings sticking out. They're easier to hit. They're easier to find. This is a HUD, heads-up display. A heads-up display gives you some of that data that's normally on the instrument panel for the pilot. It gives the pilot the information on a piece of glass that you end up looking through while you're looking out the window, in particular coming into land. Or if you're a fighter jet, you don't want to have to stop looking outside and look down at your instruments. You want that information in front of you so you can keep your head out the window and keep looking for the bad guys. There's actually HUDs on airlines, so it's not just military anymore. There's heads-up displays in a lot of airliners, in the nice new and expensive business jets. And I haven't done the research. You can probably pay to put a HUD in a little airplane, although why would you have a $25,000 airplane and put a $300,000 HUD in it? I think you probably wouldn't do that. So I think that doesn't happen much. But if you got a $30 million airplane, $300,000 for a HUD, it probably comes standard on some jets anyway, right? If you got $30 million bucks, you're not really worried about it, right? You just want to know, is the toilet lid, is the toilet seat gold-plated? That's what you want to know. And is there a wet bar in the front of the airplane and a wet bar in the back of the airplane? And how many toilets are there anyway? Question? I mean, I don't know. If I was going to get a business jet, I wouldn't be thinking about the gold-plated toilet seats. All right, let's talk about advancements in civil airplanes, that is non-military. Small electric airplanes. I could talk for an hour about the development of electric airplanes. Here's one right here. This is made by Pipistrel. It's in Slovenia. They're actually moving the factory to this Slovenia is next to Italy. They're moving the factory to Italy. The city of Reedley and the city of Mendota each are buying 2 off of a grant money, and Reedley College is going to get to use them in their flight training program. The first one ought to be showing up any month now. And they're 100% electric. They're not hybrid. They have batteries right behind the motor, and they have batteries right behind where the pilots sit, and it has about 90 minutes of power, so you can fly for an hour and then have a 30-minute reserve. And we'll get to that in private pilot ground school. But if you're flying during the day and you're VFR and you're a private pilot, you have to take off and plan your flight before you take off to have at least 30 minutes of reserve. So that means if you take off in this airplane, you fly around an hour and then you land, because you still got a half an hour of fuel left. But so far, this is the only 100% electric airplane you can buy on the planet, ready to go. Composite construction. When I say composites, I'm talking about fiberglass, Kevlar fibers, carbon fibers. It saves a lot of weight, but it's more expensive than aluminum. Here's some carbon fiber. They make fake carbon fiber to put in cars. They have real carbon fiber to put in cars. It's supposed to look cool. It saves a lot of weight, but it is more expensive. Guess which airliner, being made in the United States by Boeing, is made mostly out of carbon fiber? The Boeing 787 Dreamliner is mostly made out of carbon fiber. So it weighs a lot less. So you can either carry more fuel or carry more cargo or burn less fuel. Glass cockpit. This phrase glass cockpit that's what you call it in aviation as a pilot or an aircraft mechanic. A glass cockpit is you replace all those round gauges with the needles that wiggle around. A mechanical, there's actually a needle in there, you see it moving. A glass cockpit is really just a computerized display. So all of that information that we've looked at when we fly the simulator, those main 6 gauges, plus the engine gauges, plus the clock and all this other stuff, this aircraft has a glass cockpit or a computer. It's just a computer screen, and it displays all that information. It's all there. It's just displayed a little bit differently. And even little tiny airplanes. I've seen airplanes that have the brand new 2-seaters right now. You can get a glass panel display in it. In fact, you could retrofit your little 2-seater or 4-seater it'd probably be $20,000. So if your airplane is only worth $20,000, you're probably not going to spend $20,000 to put a computer screen in it. Probably what you're going to do is you're going to do something else, and I'll tell you what that is here in a second. So little biz jets. There are companies making small business jets that are designed not to be corporate jets where the boss sits in the back and drinks alcoholic beverages and uses the gold-plated toilet seat, but the owner of the airplane is actually the one that does the flying. Don't worry, a little tiny biz jet like this is only about $1.5 to $2 million new, instead of 10 or 20 or 30 million. A big giant biz jet, like the biggest biz jets they make, they're $35 to $40 million each new. But it'll fly from Los Angeles. It'll certainly fly to Hawaii. It might fly from LA to Tokyo without stopping, like a Grumman Gulfstream 6. And so here's another biz jet. This just has one, and this only goes about 350 miles an hour, but it's designed for a private pilot to fly. Of course, you got to have the price for this is $1.7 million, I think. That's all. Does not have a toilet. Actually, you can get a toilet in the back, but no curtain. I think all you get is a curtain, no door. And then, of course, high-end biz jets. This is the $30 or $40 million job. How many people can you put in that thing? If you did airline type seats, you could put 50 people in it, but no. This probably has a seat for 15. Big giant chairs, a galley, a restroom, a bar, a hot tub, a water bed. No, I'm just kidding about the hot tub and the water bed. I'm just kidding about that. And then we'll finish this slide tomorrow.